Good evening. You're locked into Press Pass. My name is Burrows and I'm glad you could join us. Tonight, we discuss the 2/3 gender principle due for debate on the floor of the National Assembly tomorrow. How well has the media done in promoting your understanding of the issues surrounding it? And how well have we done in capturing all sides of the story? Share your views using the NTV Kenya handle on Facebook and Twitter. You can also watch this broadcast live on those platforms. The hashtag is PressPass. Here's what you have to look forward to.
Female MPs caused a stir.
The move was intended to gather support and push for the passing of the 2/3 gender bill. On tonight's Press Pass, we ask, how has the Kenyan media performed in its coverage of the 2/3 gender debate?
Hili swala letu ambalo linaendelea kwa nchi yetu kuhusu 2/3 gender. Maoni yangu ni kwamba I support the petition.
But sisi kama wanawake tungependa kuelimishwa sana kuhusu hii mambo ya gender rule.
What do you understand by the 2/3 gender principle? Kenyans share their thoughts. Speaking of thoughts, we already have your comments coming in fast and furious. Samuel Orutwa says the media is dictated by what they're fed. 2/3 gender rule was never debated but politicians commented in support of passing it into law. But there was never, he says, never wasn't forum set to give it a critical assessment. Automatic was compelled to report as it occurred, although shallow but fair. As I take it, he means the media reports what they're told and perhaps don't dig very deeply, given he says the coverage has been shallow but fair. Now let's set the stage for tonight's discussion. A lot has been said in the past few days on the 2/3 gender principle ahead of tomorrow's debate. It is the fourth time the bill on implementation of this constitutional imperative is on the table. Let's hear what the nation's leadership has had to say on the subject.
We are asking the Parliament of Kenya to seize this historic moment and put our women in their rightful place, our daughters, our mothers, our wives in the rightful place in the leadership of our country. 30% of women leadership in Kenya, where we have 52% as women in our country, is not too much to ask.
Najua wengine wanasema hii sijui itaongeza gharama, itafanya namna hii. Lakini ule mswada ulikuwa hapo awali umebadilishwa sasa.
Joining me to take this conversation forward and in studio with me is Priscilla Nyokabi. Did I say it right? Yes, okay. A commissioner at the National Gender and Equality Commission. She's previously served as woman representative for Nyeri and she's also an advocate of the High Court. So we expect a unique perspective from her. It is ladies first. So next I'll move to Vera Okeyo, who's a practicing journalist with the Nation Media Group, as is Muriithi, who is a senior political affairs reporter with NTV. And also on the panel today, last but not least, is Mumia Osaaji, a lecturer at the University of Nairobi and a trainer on, among other issues, gender. Mumia, I'll start with you because I introduced you last. But do you think people have a clear understanding, the Kenyan public? We're going to play a few of their thoughts a bit later on. But do you think they have a clear understanding of what this whole 2/3 gender debate is about?
Thank you, Olive, for bringing me on the set. When you look at the media in general, you realize that the public is largely left behind in this debate because they are being fed by what politicians are telling them to debate. So if our president tells them to look at this part of the bill, that's what they focus on. But an independent approach of their own, especially mediated by the media, is largely lacking in this process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kennedy, I'll come to you. Now it's what is it? Men's International Day.
Yes, it is.
Okay, on account of that, so happy Men's International Day. One of the first comment I read at the start of the show, a gentleman by the name of Samuel Orutwa said, media report what they're fed. Have we been reporting what we've been fed on the 2/3 gender debate, as seems to be the position also taken by Mumia?
Well, I want to agree with that to a certain extent. The media has been reporting what it has been fed and going beyond looking at it. Because the primary rule that we have as journalists, and one of the things that will be looked out after for long, is have we answered the things that we were taught in school, that is the 5 W's and a H. Did we answer the what? What is this bill all about? Did we answer the who? Who is it targeting? And going back to the what, did we answer what are the cost implications of this? Did we answer when? When with regards to when was it first brought? How has it been? Have we tracked it to where it has been? Have we been telling this story? We will ask the how. How will it help me? How will it help the Kenyan outside there who will watch television and will want to understand how is this thing going to help me, or will it also bring food on my table? We'll ask about the where. We'll ask about the why. Why should I care about this bill?
Okay, and can I step in at that point? Have you explained that to your viewers? You are a senior political reporter with NTV.
I have definitely done that, and this is not the first time I'm covering it. And interestingly, today I was with Nyokabi. They had called us for a breakfast meeting, at least our bosses, that is the editors. And I was there as they were trying to tell us why should we care, but is it late? Debate starts tomorrow.
That's a good question. Vera, I want you to come into the discussion at that point. Kennedy says he's answered all those questions, the 5 W's and the H that he's listed. Do you think he has? You report on health and science. I don't know, have you delved into this area of female empowerment, or should I call it affirmative action, perhaps more accurately? And do you think the likes of Kennedy have reported fairly, objectively, accurately about the subject?
Because Kennedy is seated right here, I'm not going to judge his reporting of the issue.
No, you are allowed, actually.
Okay.
You're allowed.
Well, as a woman in the newsroom, we are a minority in the newsroom, so obviously issues to do with women and their well-being, it's something that at the core of my heart, as much as I write about health and science, is something I continue to study. The question about whether the 5 questions and the W's have been answered, more than ever at this point in time, where we are awash with the social media, the journalist goes beyond the 5 W's and H. Right now we are an explainer of things, a contextualizer of things. The question about whether we have covered Nyokabi and her colleagues in their work, historically, we have done very little. Women are perpetually underrepresented in the media, but now the question is, even the little that's being put there, how is it covered? When I was told I was coming to this panel, I said, you know what, let me not bring my feminism bias into this thing. Let me go do a little content analysis of the print section, which in a large portion of, I could not get audio for radio, but in terms of... So
you analyzed
I analyzed how we have covered this thing. And mostly right now, you could even find out that the people who wrote mostly about this thing and report about these things are men. And they were concerned. They were concerned about the cost implications of how much this is going to, you know, add to the country. And this will bring me back to something Mwalimu we will call the male gaze. Like we are formed by our bias of how women should be through the eyes of the man, and how the society think. I'm sure Nyokabi, I don't know whether you've been asked every time you're brought to, when you came to power, they would ask you, what kind of a wife are you? You know, those kind of questions. We are trying to still put women, even the question about cost. The society thinks women are supposed to be taken care of. So then it's like asking your husband, now that you've married the second wife, how much is this going to cost you? That's the same question that journalists perpetually do that when they're covering the 2/3 gender rule. Like women are supposed to be taken care of. They belong in the kitchen, and that's why we ask them, what kind of a wife are you? Are you a good cook? What do you do when you go home? Not asking them what kind of a lawyer are you? What things are you bringing to the table?
And I'd like to get deeper into that conversation. But Commissioner, I'd like to ask you to come in at this point. Kennedy raised a concern. He said he was with you this morning. His contention is that it may have been too late to engage the media. Do you think that's a true portrayal of the situation?
I don't think that's true, because first it took us to call them. So the media hasn't itself gone out to find out the facts and figures about this. So we, as proponents of this bill, as people who were supporting this bill, felt that it was very important for us to call them, especially on the misrepresentation on figures, that they have gone out and scared the public about the amount of money required to implement the 2/3. I mean, we do have heavy budgets in this country, in security, in transport, in education, in health. I mean, really, this is the lowest of costs as far as this could ever go to. But when they put it in the headlines, it sounds like a very scary thing. You would almost think we are bringing 2,000 women to the National Assembly. Is a small fee. So for me, the question that the figures and the facts and the misrepresentation around it is something that has worried me. And sometimes you would think that that misrepresentation is with a view to defeating the bill. Is with instead of helping us to implement a constitutional obligation, just as we have many other obligations in the Constitution, they only select this particular one, which is not the most expensive. Devolution was, for instance, very expensive, and we have implemented devolution. But they only pick this one on gender equality, which is lagging behind 8 years after, and they make it sound even more expensive than, you know, judicial reforms have been expensive, parliamentary reforms have been expensive, the executive has had its own share of the budget. So I've really been worried about, we have to literally get to the table with journalists just to get our figures and our side of the story properly on this matter. The other one that has worried me is how they've cast it as a male, is a we versus them. Why can't it be about all of us? Why can't it be a societal issue? It doesn't need to be men versus women, because the men, that dichotomy is not the best. So, like just recently it was Duale intends to bring more women. I mean, why can't it be about the society? It is not just about, we are not fighting here. We are trying to push our country forward on equality. This is only one of the many levels of equality that we want to pursue. Why can't it be all of us, me and Muriithi, not being, you know, like today there was an interesting question on value. What value will the women bring? I mean, by the time you're asking what value, surely is there any value in us even just being at the table? You know, so that it shouldn't be us versus them. It should be we. All of us need our country, Kenya, to move forward, and for it to move forward, it needs men and women, and especially on the topmost decision-making organs, National Assembly and Senate. And we will also come to 2/3 of the content in the newspaper, in the Nation newspaper. Are we getting 2/3?
That's an interesting question, Vera. I'm sure you have an opinion on that. Yes. Well, you've had my panelists' introductory remarks. Now let's hear from the man on the streets. We asked, what do you understand by the 2/3 gender principle?
Mambo ya gender naiunga mkono, but sisi kama wanawake tungependa kuelimishwa sana kuhusu hii mambo ya gender rule, so that wamama wakuwe empowered. When it comes to 2022, wamama wengi wajitokeze kusimamia viti kama kila mtu.
Kama kutakuwa na, kwa mfano, wanaume 10, basi lazima wanaume 9, lazima 3 kati yao wawe akina mama, ama kama kuna akina mama wameandikwa kazi kama 7 hivi, lazima 3 wao wawe wanaume. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono mambo ya gender rule. Nasema kwamba bunge lipitisha haraka hiyo sheria ili iwezeshe akina dada pamoja na kila mtu ili iweze kuwa sawa, kwa sababu sisi sote ni sawa na hakuna haja kukalia watu wengine.
Na ili swala letu ambalo linaendelea kwa nchi yetu kuhusu 2/3 gender, maoni yangu ni kwamba I support ipitishwe. Kwa sababu gani? Sababu ya kwanza, tuweze pia nyadhifa kina mama zetu, dada zetu nafasi katika uongozi. Maana pia katika jamii kina mama wanahitajika na wanatambulika sana, na pia wako na nafasi yao kubwa kuchangia upande wa maendeleo na mwongozo.
Tunajua ya kwamba hili jambo litakuza sana kwa upande wa kina mama. Sababu ni kwamba issue ya jinsia tunataka kuona ya kwamba kila mmoja, kila mwananchi ameguswa katika uongozi, ya kwamba kama ni mama, kama ni mzee, kama ni kijana, kama ni mlemavu, kama ni yule mwenye hajiwezi, wote wataletwa katika hii uongozi.
The debate going on the gender rule, I want to say we are in the support of it. That actually the two-third gender rule is actually going to be a cross-cutting issue that will advantage both sides. The gender, we only don't have to just look in terms of women. The gender is cutting both women and men. And currently in positions of leadership, the women are actually in one way or the other been disadvantaged when it gets to the issues of parliament. And the gender rule is actually to help to come in bringing out that balance. And I want to say the gender rule cuts across, because you may find an issue whereby there is some opportunities where it's mainly women. That is when also the issue of a third issue of men also comes in.
Now, let's get a sense of the public sentiment from your posts online. As I said, you can tweet us on @NTV Kenya. My handle is @Burrows. And I will give you our panelists' Twitter handles in just a minute. But Dantec Media says, when you talk of two-thirds gender rule, it is the most baseless argument. Applying this to all posts means task duplication, and that's when we will have more idle thinkers who will come up with ideas of free vehicles and more allowances, even for their spouses, in the name of appointments. The comments on Facebook, there are quite a few. I will have to track them down. I think I've lost them. Oh yes, we have a gentleman by the name of Oga Emmanuel Okeyo, who says he's never seen the need to create positions for ladies. See what pay the already existing positions. But a lady by the name of Sarah Carroll has a different opinion. She says change must come, and no matter how long it takes, it will come. Kennedy, no. Your reportage has informed these sentiments. What are your thoughts?
Yes, and the reportage that is going outside there is informed by what the discussion is all about. The women members of parliament and those who are agitating and pushing for this have made it a women affair. It is only today, and I thank Mheshimiwa and those who organized the meeting today, is that we got to understand what it is all about. And this bill has been mutating every time it is presented before the House. And we've been reporting every time it is brought. And today they made a math, they brought maths, and they told us, which I want to agree with them, is that they said that we've brought it down from what you guys are saying on the media, and it is coming to about 22. That is the number of people that we need to top up in the name of special seats if in the next elections we do not have the required numbers to bring outside there. But they have made it a women affair, that they have not involved men and their male MPs from the beginning to ask them, let us work together. They've been doing this probably in the last 2 months, and we've been reporting it. Even NTV has been on the forefront of doing it, is that they even started wearing headscarves just to call on their fellow men, members of parliament, to come out and actually support them on this. It even took the president himself to call on the House leadership to probably this time round come up with something that is going to be agreeable to all. I even hear there is going to be a parliamentary group meeting by most of the major political parties tomorrow. But what has been informing this is the fact that, and I'm a man, by the fact that I'm a journalist, I'm a man who goes outside there, is that so many men are disinterested in what is going on because it has been made to be a women affair. Okay, Kennedy. And at that point, I'd like to bring in the other man on the panel. Mumia, do you think we have framed this, as the Commissioner says, as a women's issue as opposed to a societal issue? Actually, there are two issues, I can call perspectives to it. First, if we look at the bills that have been agitating to bring the not more than two-thirds gender principle, we start with the former AG, Githu Muigai's attempt
to have the Supreme Court give an opinion in the, on the matter. It didn't go through well because the Supreme Court shirked its responsibility. And then we had the 2 bills by Chepkonga. They also fell apart. Then we had now 2 bills by Duale. And now this one also is ideally owned by Duale. So if you look at the imprimatur of maledom on this process, it is quite evident. But I'm coming in from a gender perspective, and I'm looking at it as perhaps an attempt by men who are purportedly pushing this agenda on the surface, but subverting it deviously beneath. Because why haven't we seen the success by the agitation from the AG's office up to now, until now the 2 heads, the honchos, politically speaking, the president and his deputy, have now stood up and said, no, we have to push our might in parliament. So my thinking is, we have to be, especially through the media, we have to be suspicious about the male agenda here. It is two-faceted. On the surface, it appears to be pushing for women and collaborating with them, but beneath, there could be some deviousness, trying to undermine the whole agenda.
Okay, okay, you're very vocal in your agreement of what Mumia has to say.
Because you know, when we say women have put this thing as a women's affair, if you are a reporter, Olive, in this day and age, you cannot divorce your reporting from the historical issues that women have been facing in this country. I mean, they're making it a women's affair, and you saying that we need to involve our male MPs from the very beginning, that tells me that as a woman, if I'm an MP, I need permission from the man to make it. That's not what I mean. No, when you say that from the very beginning, wait.
Olive,
let me just finish.
Point,
okay.
From the very beginning,
let me finish
my point.
From
the very that we needed to, that the female MPs needed to involve the their male colleagues from the very start. I don't think the male colleagues involve their female colleagues anytime whenever they want to pass anything.
And you bring in MPs, Kennedy, before I come back for your rebuttal. But Commissioner, you served in the 11th Parliament. Yes. Do you think Vera's assessment is fair, that it's being driven, and even what Mumia said, it's being viewed as a male-driven agenda and they could be sabotaging it beneath the surface?
I think it's even more difficult than that. It's a bit more complex. And what I have seen is the wearer of the shoe knows where the shoe pinches most. So this is a constitutional issue. We have many constitutional issues that we needed to deal with. But this particular one, because the gender that is low in numbers now is the female gender, it has turned out that we have to lead the campaign ourselves. Even though the Constitution has had many other more problematic places to implement, we have to lead the campaign. So it's just been that the wearer of the shoe gets pinched more, so then has got to be active. Because I remember even for some of the utterances that you see now, for example, the president and the deputy president getting onto it, it has taken women to lobby them to also come on and do this. But I think that the relationships of our genders remain to be a bit of an issue for a country, not for anybody's doing. Is our culture, is our traditions, is where we find ourselves as a country moving from traditional systems to modern systems. So that's why we're saying now it shouldn't even be, are the men in front, are the women in front, who is leading who? It should be all of us. This is our issue, so that, for example, tomorrow, we don't expect the male MPs to say, this is a women issue. We only have 76 members of parliament who are female. Can they go to the floor alone? We want to see, this is a constitutional issue for the Parliament of Kenya. The National Assembly has 349 members. This is a constitutional issue. Can 349 members of parliament troop to the House and, you know, deal with the debate without, are the women in front, are the Kewopo members here? And that is where we feel the pain of the journalists, because sometimes, like when we didn't get the first vote, the day of the 195, they won't tell us how many men didn't vote for the bill. But woe unto you if you are a woman and you go somewhere and there's traffic in Nairobi and you don't make it to the house on the day of voting. Oh, the media will make sure you are roasted alive, you know. That is wrong. It should be all the and they don't roast like another 100 men who didn't even come to the floor. But you single woman, so we are now alive to the duties. But can it be a constitutional issue and a societal issue and an issue for the National Assembly tomorrow? Don't particularly blame the women when they are not there, don't particularly blame the men. Can 349 members of parliament, together with their speaker, be at the floor of the House tomorrow?
All right, Kennedy, you wanted to comment on what Vera said, but do you also think it would have been easier for you to report on this issue if it was a woman's name as the sponsor of the bill?
We've reported even one thing that Mwalimu and Vera have also not said is that Senator Sijeni had also tried to bring such a bill, and it failed. It emanated from the Senate, but it came again and it also failed. So did we report when it had been brought by a woman MP? Yes, we did. Are we reporting this from a man's perspective? No, we are not. At the end of the day,
but I mean, I see where the commissioner is coming from, though, because I recall, I can't remember if it was a first vote and then not all women were present to vote for it, and they really got clobbered for it in the media.
We were only asking questions. You're the people who are driving this agenda. Why don't you just first of all make sure that on this particular day, let everything else that you're doing be second to what you want everybody else to believe to be right? Am I supporting this? Yes, it's a constitutional, it's a constitutional provision that needs to be passed. Remember that if it is not passed, some people have already even gone to court to say that Parliament has failed to legislate on this. It is time that we that we dissolved it. Remember, and from what I got today morning, I got more enlightened, and this is what they should, by me saying that they came late, is because the information that they gave us today is information that would have been given a long time ago, and it would have informed debate. But coming right now... Okay, you keep
bringing up numbers that they presented to you today. How are those numbers different from what you had reported previously?
What had been reported previously is that we were looking in Duale 1, that is, the bills are now called between Duale 1 and Duale 2. In Duale 1, we were looking at about 100 and something numbers.
Then not.
That is what we were looking at.
117 is the total you would have needed, but we had some in the House. We, for example, have the 47,
yes,
which is what the media doesn't do. It doesn't say you need 176, but 47 are already
But
there.
then it was still, nobody came out to say what it was. And we even in our research, we could do research and we will still come up with 100 and something. Today, they came and said, if you do your math, the number of women in Parliament at this particular time is 76. How do we arrive at 76? 47 elected women representatives, 6 nominated, which is making 51, and 23 that are elected at the 290 constituencies. Every time noise is made about women and how we need representation, and we go into an election, the numbers rise. In the 11th Parliament, it was 16. Why don't they also resort to the other one, whereby they start the campaign early, call on media houses and journalists who cover Parliament to rally around them, and call on other women to come in, to call on journalists to come in and report from the beginning, not when this thing is coming, this bill is coming to Parliament for debate, and that is when you want to rush, call my bosses, the editors, and say, oh, we need support.
Okay.
Just a day to the debate.
Let me bring in Mumia at that point. Yeah. Mumia, do you feel, because it's an issue the president raised yesterday, and he was telling MPs, you know, this is not the same bill that there was before in terms of the cost implications. Do you think the media has effectively communicated that information to the public? And it raises the concern that MPs may not have perused the amendment.
I think it gets lost in what linguists will call the syntax and lexicon. Here, I'm talking about the possibility of media complicity, loosely speaking. In the media, I think we have got the back office and the front office. The front office has especially a predominance of the feminine face. And then the back office is the haggard, surangumus. These are the people who then make decisions. And perhaps it could be influencing the gendered pitching of the news reporting of women's issues in Parliament. I want also to just make reference to, for example, some of the images and grammar that the media uses. For example, we've got this unnecessary grammar of giving women, for example, female MP, female MCA, female senator. This kind of phrasing appears to suggest that the gender of that particular politician or leader is more important than the issue being raised. And that percolates and becomes normalized, so much so that we have what the commission chair was saying, the we versus them. And this narrative goes up into parliament, it goes into the civil society, it goes into the civic body, and it continues then to build up the patriarchal control of our politics, of our economy, and of our systems, which, in my view, I think it falls with the media. Can we now start interrogating this? Can we point out the weaknesses of our own insider workings, the structures inside the media houses? How do they work? Do we have blinkered, the kind of faces we wear, the kind of spectacles we put on? Do they affect the reporting? It is something that needs some in-house reflection.
Okay, and I'd like to hear what Vera and Kennedy have to say on that. I'd also like to hear how you think they should be describing or introducing elected officials or leaders from the different genders. But after this break, remember, the handle is at NTV Kenya. The hashtag is PressPass. Share your thoughts on the conversation. You're watching Press Pass, and in studio with me I have 4 panelists. We have Commissioner Priscilla Nyokabi from the National Gender and Equality Commission, previously served as County Woman Representative, or I'm being told now to say County Member of Parliament for Nyeri, and is also an advocate of the High Court. Next to her is Mumia Osaaji, who's a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, and his experience in linguistics came out just before the break when he was saying how we describe our elected leaders really does matter. And next to him is Vera Okeyo, who is a practicing journalist with Nation Media Group. She specializes in issues, science and health, but is very passionate when it comes to women issues, and also is filling us in on women in the newsroom. Is there gender equality? And next to her is our senior political reporter for NTV, Muriithi. Thank you all for being here. Let's just look at a few of the comments that have come in. Their Twitter handles are at Wakili Nyokabi, at Beyond Headline, that is Beyond a Headline. Is that correct? Yes, that is Vera's handle. And there is at Muriithi Ken, that is Muriithi with an I and an underscore before the Ken with 2 N's. Ken, that is really tricky. Then we have, but I think you can see that on the screen. I think we can show you that on the screen. And then we have Osaaji M, who is our lecturer, a linguistics lecturer from University of Nairobi, working towards his PhD. So those are their handles. Reach out to them, reach out to us at NTV Kenya at Burrows. Now let's see a few of the thoughts that have already come in. Sir Victor Rotich says the rule is all about increasing the skyrocketing wage bill, and yet little will be gained from the positions. How have women reps impacted the development of our country? Abdallah Mdambo says, when we have more women in leadership roles, our business is more successful. Mixed gender groups drives creativity, yet only 17% of media leadership and 1/3 of newsrooms are female, despite the fact that 2/3 of journalism graduates are female. Abdallah, are you speaking from experience? Are you a practicing journalist? It would be good to know where you've gotten those figures from. Francis Waruhari, he says equality of outcome is unjust and restricts high achievements of men because of the low achievements of women. A decent society should not try to build a better aristocracy. It should try to achieve a reasonable rising standard of living and equality of opportunity. Mumia, before we went on the break, we were discussing the language used in our stories. So how would you propose that we describe the female and male genders in our stories?
One of it would be to deconstruct, first of all, beginning by deconstructing these myths about these monstrous women. Women have been eroticized, especially
oh, that's a big word. What does that mean?
Their bodies have been sexualized, so much so that when we report, when Muriithi reports in Parliament, there's a likelihood of having that passing glance at the miniskirt, the slit, you know, such kind of things. And people would focus on those and forget the real issue, you know. And in my view, that's where the language should begin. How do we desexualize women in the media? Number 2, how do we construct positive images to replace these eroticized images? An image of a woman who is constructive and contributing constructively to the ensuing debate.
Yes, Kennedy, I'll come to you.
And then the 3rd one is exploration. You guys have what I can call in-house dictionaries. Exploration of lexicon that would construct positive images. For example, why should we call our MCS women MCS? Why can't we just call them MCS? Why should we refer to, when Mheshimiwa was representing Nyeri, why should we call her woman rep? Why can't we just call her the MP for the Nyeri County? So these are positive phrasings that will help to build a positive image of our women leaders.
Okay, Kennedy, I'm not going to put you to hot water and ask you whether you eroticize female members of parliament that you cover, but do you think it's a fair assessment?
No, that's neither here or there. You know, Mwalimu wants to talk from a classroom setup. The Constitution calls them women rep. That's what the Constitution calls them. Why should I, as a journalist, call them anything else? And they went to Parliament, I remember in the 11th Parliament, and they were saying that we no longer want to be called women reps. We want to be called county MPs. I remember that, and Mheshimiwa will say, and when you talk about eroticism, that word, look at Mheshimiwa there. I don't want to say so much because I know people are watching.
Yeah, that
but
would be
I would
wise,
go to her because of what she's offering. She was in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And that is one of the most revered committees of Parliament. Did she offer me something? Yes. When you go to some of these women leaders in Parliament, is it wrong to call them women leaders? No. If you go to some of them, they will tell you, wait, what will the president say if I say what I want to say? But there are those who will stand their ground and say, wait a minute, I can comment on that. I remember one time interviewing Mheshimiwa Millie Odhiambo, and she said, let them call me what they want. Do they want to call me these big words that the oldest trade? Let them call me what they want to call me. But does that tinker with what is in my brains? No. So when you say that women have been or something else, I don't think it is true. The ideal setup is that we as journalists go to you because you have something to offer. And if I come to you and I think that the views that you've given me are going to add value to my story, I'll use you because I don't want to also look stupid on air by just putting anybody else.
Okay. Vera, I want to come in at that point. One of the tweets that we read right after the break talked about a third of women, a third of the reporters in newsrooms being women and less than that in positions of leadership. Do you think that has influenced how we have covered these issues?
Okay, Oliver, the fact that more female journalists graduate from journalism school does not mean it's going to influence how we report on it. It has no influence at all. But I would like to say studies have been
graduate. His point was that there are fewer women in the newsroom, and especially in decision-making capacities. In your experience, you've had editors.
Okay.
Do you think the maleness or the majority of the male members of in the leadership in newsrooms sort of influences how these stories are covered?
I don't know the story about nation particularly for that, but studies have shown that, particularly in Africa, Media Council has done whatever we are talking about here, has done a study about it. I think it was published in 2016, and they realized that majority of, to build on to what eroticizing is, there are very many female anchors, like what you do, and none of them are above 40. I don't know how true that is. Now, when you come to reporting, particularly in political reporting, 86% of those are men. Where? That's where you start the gatekeeping where you decide what story goes on in there. They are men. I'm not saying that it's going to affect how it's going to report. A study has not been done to show that. But coming back to the sociology of journalism, which probably was referring to, a journalist is not divorced from the kind of things that they are socialized to believe. If you grew up in a patriarchal system, you'll bring that to the newsroom. I write about health because my mother was a nurse, and I believe people should have they should be healthy. I can report about politics. I studied music in school. I can report about that. But because of how I was socialized, that's what I bring to the newsroom. Okay. So we cannot run away from the fact that we have more men political reporters affect how this thing is going to be reported. And talking about language, maybe I don't know about eroticizing in that sexual way, but if you look at the caricatures, and I did a content analysis of that too, a caricature, you know, the cartoons, it thrives on two things, exaggeration and individualization. When it particularly comes to men, Anne Waiguru is they'll caricature her look like the huge hips, and you know how Ruto and the president are there ogling at her, you know. That's a caricature. That is still eroticizing. And in terms of language, look at women like Martha Karua, at like Charity Ngilu. What words do we use to describe them? Iron lady. What does that mean?
It means that she's
it means
the test
it is still,
and she does not care.
No, it communicates.
She's only doing her job.
Wait, it communicates that women are naturally expected to be gentle. Do we describe Moses Kuria as the Iron Man? Let's answer that question.
All right.
Do journalists
I'd like the commissioner actually to come in at that point. And as you respond to what Vera has said about her content analysis, you were sharing some of your experiences during the break. And I asked, do you think the female representation in the newsroom sometimes affects our coverage of these issues? And you talked about having worked with the Media Council of Kenya and how sometimes you would sort of pitch a story and all you'd get is a brief.
That's true. That's true, and not just myself. I mean, we do have political leaders who are women now. We have governors who are women now who are serving and doing a good job about it. And I, for example, went out to Governor Laboso's first year launch of what she had done. I mean, if a male governor is going to do the 1 year launch, there will be heavy presence of journalists. If a woman governor is doing the same thing, oh my good Lord, you have to look for that story with a torch, you know, literally in the newspaper. Find it. That is true.
Kennedy, we'll come to you. Okay, Kennedy, we'll give you a chance. Let the commissioner, Kennedy, I will come to you. You see, all she's getting is a brief and you're getting the headline. Let her finish what she's saying.
Call for the newspaper here. I can tell you, I mean, it's not just for one day. It is almost like page 1 to 5 are now reserved for male politicians. Page 1 is Raila Odinga, page 2 is President Uhuru Kenyatta, page 3 is Deputy President, page 4 is Moses Kuria, page 5 is Governor Sonko, page 7 is, I mean, women, even our strongest, even our Iron Lady, is closer to the obituary, you know. as you go, that is how bad media coverage has become of women. And so this equality for us, don't just look at the 2/3 bill tomorrow. It is a bigger conversation for all of us. It is a bigger conversation for how are we sharing the limited space. The newspaper is not big. The newspaper is limited to 30, 35 pages. That limited space of sharing the national agenda and shaping the national agenda, how are we as men and women sharing that space so that even the stories that are balanced, we find male leaders, we find female leaders, and seeing that the female leaders are so few, really some affirmative action should also be applied there in terms of how much coverage they get. Because by the time Kenyan people are failing to elect women, it is because we don't have many positive stories of what women are doing. And he said correctly during the break about the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. It is indeed true, it was a little fund. But if people could see how much that little fund is doing, they would then think to themselves, if a woman can manage 6 million, then a woman can manage 10 billion. If a woman can manage 6 million, maybe this is the person we need. But then that means that there is an agenda. You know, we're not just here because tomorrow the bill is coming. It means that the nation has taken gender equality as an issue for them in terms of the things that they do. And that's why I keep coming back to the societal issues. How do we feel that now Kenya, a country we love, a country that is doing well on technology, doing well on education, doing well on economic changes and being among the fastest growing economies, is number 100 internationally on gender equality. In East Africa here, even South Sudan has beaten us. The youngest country in Africa has 109 women members of parliament out of 383. We, of 50 years of independence, of many years of affirmative action, bill after bill after bill after bill, I have 76. We are in Africa number 26 in terms of gender equality. All of the countries of East Africa have beaten us. Many countries in West Africa have beaten us. So as a Kenyan society, now forget male and female, how do we feel that we are not in a leading capacity in Africa? Because in economic terms, we like to compare ourselves with Nigeria and South Africa and being the top 5 best countries in Africa, the top 5 cities. Nairobi is one of the best cities. People across the East Africa dream of coming to Nairobi, just as we dream of going to New York, they dream of coming to Nairobi. But this Nairobi, where is the space for men and women in this country of ours? And why can't it be that we join hands so that we push our ranking? You know, just as we have pushed, for example, our ranking for cost of business, we have all really played a part. Companies law, we have reformed how companies are working. So now, and that is the call for us for tomorrow. Let us not even worry about Yalio Sipita Sindwele. Sasa tuendeni mbele kesho, kutoka kesho, how do we come together to put this bill, because if Duale bill passes tomorrow, it will move our country from number 100 to somewhere close to number 50 in the world, and maybe about top 10 in Africa. And that is a good country. Equality is a good one. You know, we don't even go to 5% of persons with disability, because if we never finish this gender equality, we are never even going to go to the youth equality. We are never going to go. 5% is also in the constitution. 5% of persons with disability. Yes. So after we finish this show, Sikawiye sana, you also call us now. We decide we discuss how the persons with disability also represented. In any case, don't even ask about Muriithi. When was the last time he covered a story of persons with disability?
I'll have you answer that question. Mumia, I'll come to you. Let him just respond to that, because I also want you to respond to something else. She raised the issue of where Kenya ranks, and I'd like you to comment on that. Kennedy, your facial expressions communicated to me that you disagree about finding women's stories with a torch.
Yeah, I disagree, because number one, do we as journalists and media houses sacrifice gender for content? No, we cannot. Because at the end of the day, we put those people there because they have content. And I will go back to what I've said before, is Priscilla Nyokabi will tell you, when she was there in the 11th Parliament, I used to call her for comment before I thought about someone else, or somebody else who I think will add value. And that is what we're saying. And today, remember, and you know media loves controversy, and so do Kenyans. Even right now, if you go to YouTube, if you do a story about diabetes, what Vera reports on, and you go and do a story about what Mudavadi has said about Ruto, what Mudavadi has said about Ruto will have more comments and views than what diabetes will have to say. Remember when one time Nyeri Town Member of Parliament, Esther Murugi, said, "Mukipereka Uhuru Hague, nitatoa guo." And she said that, and it became news. And that is what controversy is all about. And she was in between page 1 and page 10.
So are you saying women are not controversial enough?
I think so. And some of them are just afraid.
Okay. Mumia, I wanted you to come in, and I know you want to comment on that.
I'll tie into that.
Yes, and respond to him. And you didn't answer the commissioner's question. When was the last time you covered a story on persons with disability?
They haven't called a press conference.
But you only cover press conferences. You need to chase down your stories. Mumia, yes, comment on that. And then also, the commissioner brought in the aspect of where Kenya ranks in East Africa. Rwanda has been in the headlines time and again for its record-setting number of women in parliament. I think it's over 60% of women in Rwanda's parliament, of MPs in Rwanda's parliament are women. And also the Ethiopian PM has also been making headlines with the changes he's made to the cabinet, and also with the appointment of a woman, first woman president there. So are they telling their stories differently? Because I thought we all come from patriarchal societies. So what is it that they're doing differently that we are not?
Perhaps Rwanda and Ethiopia have different experiences. You know, they have been experiencing war for some time, and then with the regime change from a war situation, the reconstruction gives impetus to experimentation. This is why Rwanda, within a very short time, achieved gender parity in parliament, in ministerial portfolios, and in many other sectors of development. I think Ethiopia is also doing the same, especially with the new regime change after the transition. So I would place those countries slightly differently from Kenya, because Kenya, we have not revolutionized our thinking. We've been evolving gradually. But this gradualism, to me, is a little bit unnerving, because it is too slow that we are heaving. You can feel the society heaving for something seismic. Now, I want to come to what Vera had said about the socialization of journalists within the media houses, but also within their own societies where they come from. There is this fixation with the trophy of toughness, no? The war imagery and the lexicon of warfare. We need those tough women, you know. We were referring to now the new governor of Kirinyaga as a tough lady. We used to refer to Mother Karua, Honorable Mother Karua, as the Iron Lady. And The same applies to the new governor of Kitui, Charity Ngilu, the tough, the Iron Ladies. Now, this imagery of violence, the juxtaposition of women who in our socialization are supposed to have the nurturing qualities, the motherly qualities to be owned by society, against the new image in leadership of them adorning the regalia of warfare, you know. It is an image that if you build it up there, the way the media does, especially in the cartoons which Vera was referring to, it produces a different perspective in society. You find society feeling like we don't need, psychologically, it percolates, it normalizes women, it has that reverse coin of normalizing women in their cocoons. You feel like if you allow that woman to have that elevated position, then she will become a monster or monstress. The institution she's leading will become some kind of monstrosity that would perhaps ride roughshod over society. And this fear percolates in society among voters, and in some areas of this country, we've never had any woman representative.
Okay.
Apart from the MCs we've talked about.
Okay.
So, in my view, coming to my friend Ken, is there a way in which the media can interrogate these tropes, the construction of this masculine image of women, so that we don't normalize masculinity because it's an imposition? Let women be women. They have a certain quality they bring on board. The way men are men. If we have a male statesman, it's normal. But the moment a woman tries to become a stateswoman, that becomes a problem. We problematize them so that we try to put them in some kind of what I can call the armor of David and Goliath, you know, the combatant image, which is very negative.
Kennedy, I want to give the ladies a choice. Thank you very much for that point, Mumia. Kennedy will come to you for that response. But Vera, first of all, before we take a break, have you ever gone to your editor and sort of taken issue with the way perhaps a woman has been portrayed in a story?
Yes, I have. First of all, let's not just put, I know I'll be very harsh on criticizing how we report about these things, because I've decided to look at it sometimes as an academic and at the same time as a reporter. But in the ideal world, sometimes editors make those mistakes because it's not deliberate. It's just the way, as I said, socialization of how we've been socialized. And also there's also this media's obsession with people at the top notch of political and societal success. And women have not been there for a while. We have been obsessed with, you know, mostly it's men who have been there, who have been successful. So now women are trying to rise up, and it's easy to just put them to be described in such a way, the same way that they are. I've gone to editors to tell them I don't like, in most cases, putting women looking like a victim. And in most cases, if you explain it to them and they see the point, they change it. They don't refuse. They'll make snide remarks here and there, but by the end of the day, reason prevails. But also I would like to, this time I would now, as we try to say women should not be made to look like victims, I would also like to take notice that I've been a reporter before, and with UN Women, when they were still very active in trying to support female MPs, which I decided to take stories, and I would take notice, Nyokabi, that sometimes getting women to participate in their own affairs in the media is hard. I don't know what needs to be, and you know, we work, in this career, we work with strict deadlines. If you want to have good quality, you need to give it to the editor to lay out, to edit, to do that. So some of the mistakes that come out, the reason why we put women to be the way they are, or the little space is allocated to them, is because you can even see, okay, I saw your debate on parliament, you are not handled well, and that's, you are talking to a woman. Would you like to talk about this? They will completely shy away from that. They will run away from that, and then the next time they say, oh, the media is not coming. I would also like women parliamentarians to know that in this job, there's something we call a new hole. in sociology of journalism, like there's a frame, like when you're going through the rigors of production, the editing and stuff like that, if you find someone you've been built familiarity with and they are easy to access and they understand the rigors of your job, you will most likely reach out to that person, because by 4 p.m. Muriithi does not want to hear that I've not done this, sorry, give me more time. So you'll most likely reach out to
Vera,
the journalist. Yeah.
Kennedy, unfortunately we have to take a break at that point, but I would like the Commissioner to respond to that, because one of the comments we are seeing on Twitter from a gentleman who describes himself as a disgusted tweep. He says, we had great leaders like Wangari Maathai. They even earned the prestigious Nobel Prize out of sheer will. One may be nominated but still unable to push for reforms. The current women MPs cannot even lobby or rally behind a cause. He misspelled that, but I think he meant a cause. So basically, I take it it's what Vera is also saying in part is also women have to fight for that space. More on that after this break. Vera, who's also a practicing journalist with The Nation, Mumia, who is a lecturer with the University of Nairobi, and Commissioner Priscilla Nyokabi. Now, before we went on the break, I read out a tweet by Disgusted Tweep, who says basically women should fight for their space. And Kennedy, you seemed to agree during the break.
Yes, I seem to agree, and want to first of all call on Mwalimu. Mwalimu, I think the class definition on what is actually happening outside here is now there is a disconnect. Number one, the definition of news has never changed, and it will never change. And the most important thing is news becomes news when a man bites a dog. When you say that we are not eroticizing, when we are looking at women through the lens of a man and wanting them to act as other men are doing, but that is what will make news for them. Governor Charity Ngilu has gotten to where she is because she stood in that gap and decided that I will not act as other women have. Governor Anne Waiguru was not shaken with what people said. She said, okay, there is a probe, let me step down. Okay, as this is going because I've not been convicted, let me go ask for votes. Because people expected that if you attack her, she'll coil. And that is when she became whoever she became. It's because she stood in that gap. And when we'll be looking at statespeople and as statesmen, and we'll be looking at women who've performed, they've gone the extra mile. And they've decided not to be what Vera has explained, is that, yes, I saw you in Parliament trying to make a comment, but I saw the treatment you got either from the Speaker or somebody from the Speaker's panel. What are your comments on this, and how do you think we can change? And she will tell you, no, I can't comment on this. You see, even those, as I've said earlier, even those who've been given positions, is that the President, in his wisdom, and those close to him felt like if we lost this person for the next 5 years, then what it means is that we will have lost some brains. Despite the fact that they've been removed by the electorate, we'll have lost. So Mwalimu, when you come and say that we're looking at women through the lens of men, I think you'll be unfair to us as journalists, because what you're looking at is that extra thing that they've done that warrants them.
Okay.
To be
all right,
on
Kennedy.
news.
Unfortunately, we have to be brief now because we are running out of time. But before I come to you, Commissioner, because I'd like to end with you so you can give us, actually set us straight on the right numbers and figures, because you're saying these sexy headlines, I could also say sexist headlines, about Duale wanting to bring more women to Parliament are not productive. But Mumia, I'd like you to first respond to Kennedy before I go to Vera.
I want to draw your attention to what is happening in New Zealand, where the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern recently, delivered, and the media was all over. They were wondering how she will juggle the office and the care of the baby. And then when her partner, Clark Gayford, I hope I'm pronouncing it properly, came to take over the responsibility of taking care of the baby, and then the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern took over the mantle to continue leading the country. There is some kind of anxiety in the media. It created a media sensation in a developed country, New Zealand. So our media here is not unique, in as much as we have our own cultural, patriarchal strings that tightly, in a way, manage the way we look at things. But I'm feeling like the patriarchal codes permeate virtually all spheres where men control the levels of power. And I want just to say that these codes, in my view, because we are progressing, need to be unsettled. We have to take a first step towards unsettling these codes, unsettling the eroticization of women, unsettling the patrilineal identification of women with maternal and nurturing, not leadership. So that when we have a woman statesperson in public limelight, it's not sensationalized. She is there by virtue of being a leader. So I think that's what I can say.
Okay. And actually, it's quite interesting because also in America, for the first time, a female congresswoman took her breastfeeding child into the precincts of what do they call it, the House? Yeah. So, yeah, it's actually perhaps not just in Kenya because it caused quite the media sensation. Vera, as part of your concluding remarks, do you think the small space we give women in our publications contributes, or rather sort of makes it harder for them to get elected because people perhaps are not so accustomed to them?
Well, partly yes, it contributes to that and to some other societal things, even on personal relations that in the corporate world, because the media does influence how we think about issues. As we go on about that, we keep saying women need to fight for this thing. Let me tell you, Olive, women have been fighting to survive since time immemorial. We are not going to do more than that. When people start to bring issues like Wangari Maathai and the rest, people don't know at what cost Wangari had to get that point. And it's unfair to ask women to sacrifice what she did so that they can get along with that. Wangari Maathai did that so that women like me can have as insurance, because at that point she was fighting for something like that. So it's not good, because we don't ask such kind of things from men. So we should not be asking women, go the extra mile and all that. We can go the extra mile as a leader, you need to go the extra mile. But let people don't think that women have been playing victims. It is true, some are playing victims, but majorly, women have been fighting for a very long time. When they go for campaigns, they're the ones who are threatened with being stripped, they're the ones threatened with being beaten and being shamed. So it's, don't ask women to fight, because they are fighting. They are fighting very large battles. And to answer your question, I think every media house, we cannot separate the academic and the practice, because the academia informs the practice. It's about time that media houses conduct some sort of a little research and reflect on what they do. Even the little space that we allocate to women, let it have quality. We need to ask questions like, because you see even the small spaces that we allocate to women, you find they're either witnesses, I mean their role, their voice in that story is still little. I mean, 30% of the stories are for women, but even in that one story, the role that you allocate that woman in that story is still very little. Okay. It's either personal experience. You find that the voice is not edifying them in any other way. So media houses need to have that conversation and keep looking at how they practice and change. This is a growing field. We are not perfect, we keep trying, but we also need to have a third eye to look at what we do.
All right, thank you very much, Vera. Kennedy, a comment for you from Cleo Menes. He says, I think Vera and Muriithi should listen to what Mwalimu Osaaji is arguing out. Eroticism is indeed common in media reporting, and that's what Osaaji is saying. He's not trying to undermine their work or to make them defensive. I think at the end of this show, Osaaji, eroticism will be trending. Finally, let's end with you, Commissioner. I was hoping you could set us straight in terms of the numbers and the figures as we go into tomorrow's debate.
I'm just going to do exactly that, because the bill now changes the reference point. We said earlier that Duale 1 started from 349. Duale 2 now, the bill that is going tomorrow, 2018 bill, starts from 290. When you have a reference point of 290, then the numbers are lower. And we have said there's no need of putting the ratio on what are already affirmative action seats, like the 47 and the 6 out of 12 especially nominated. So that for 290 now, you will then need 97 women or to bring the ratio up to 290. You already have the 47, you have the 6, you have the 23. So if you do the math, it's actually coming to 22 women to be nominated. And if you use the current remuneration package for members of parliament, it's just about 282 million, which is 0.8% addition to the parliamentary budget.
Is that annually or monthly?
Annually.
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 Okay.
It's really, I mean, if you look at some of the money we have not accounted for, if you look at the budget we couldn't account for at IEBC, it is much more than what we are asking for. If you look at money we couldn't account for in education, it is much more than what we are asking for in terms of implementing the 2/3. And so this will require only 0.8% addition to what we have in the parliamentary budget of 31 billion. Per capita, it's coming to 6 shillings per citizen. 6 shillings per citizen. But then we hear the message of, don't just tell us about what we are paying, what is the value that we are getting. We just looked at the bill, the book by Phoebe Asio, where she's put out a couple of bills that women have brought over time. Bills on personal suitability, bills on family law, bills on anti-FGM. We have heavily supported matters of health, always in the National Assembly. So that value is something that we have to work on. And I get the point about we women not being ready to engage the media. We are also listening. It's just that my fear is we have different styles. Drama is a male style of politics in this country. If you try to be a woman dramatist, my good Lord, you will be in total trouble. So when we refuse to be confrontational, it's not that we refuse, it's just there are certain way we are wired. And the wiring that is with men is not the wiring that is with women. Being careful before you say something on media is probably a wiring that we women have that may not be a wiring that is available for the male. And what we are saying is that because the talents and lenses are different, we then want both. We want those who can comment quickly and those who can comment in depth. Because if you give a woman more time, she's probably not going to be very quick on the comment, but she's probably going to give you where is the position of Kenya in Africa. The man might just say quick things, you know, there and there. So even for the media, that's the accommodation we're asking for. That we come in different styles. Can we find accommodation without having to be men? I then don't have to punch a wall for me to be in the page 3. Can I come to page 3 with a project that I have done? Can I come to page 3 neat, nice, proper? I don't have to wear a miniskirt. I don't have to remove my top, you know. I don't have to really do all that drama to come into the media to be accepted for the coverage. But I can assure you that listening we are. It's just that for tomorrow, we are urging that this particular debate moves our society forward, that these figures are not scary. This is not the biggest of costs that we could suffer as a country. 292 million is something that we can accommodate comfortably. Even now, we may not even have to wait for 2022, so that the talents of men and the talents of women, the lenses that men use, the lenses that women use, are what we bring to our space of decision making. And then together, we then confront patriarchy, we then confront corruption, we then confront inequality together. Not one gender leaving the other gender behind. Okay. But thank you very much for this show. I've always just watched it from home.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. Kennedy, you will have to forgive me. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But keep the conversation going online. The hashtag is PressPass. At NTV Kenya is the handle. I think I introduced your Twitter handles a bit earlier on. Now on to the international radar. The United States intelligence has concluded that Saudi Arabia's ambitious young crown prince, that is Mohammed bin Salman, personally ordered the execution of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The CIA has concluded that Salman ordered the assassination of the journalist in Istanbul last month, contradicting the Saudi government's claims that he was not involved in the killing.
Turkey has given recordings related to the killing of Jamal Khashoggi to Germany, France and Britain, seeking to maintain international pressure on Riyadh over the Saudi journalist's death. Speaking as he left Turkey to attend World War I commemorations in France, Erdogan said for the first time the 3 European Union states had heard the recordings. President Erdogan did not give details of the contents of the tapes, but 2 sources say Turkey has several audio recordings. They include the killing itself and conversations predating the operation, which Turkey subsequently uncovered. These had led Ankara to conclude from an early stage that the killing was premeditated, despite Saudi Arabia's initial denials of any knowledge or involvement. A team of 15 Saudi agents allegedly flew to Istanbul on government aircraft in October and killed Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate, where he had gone to collect documents that he needed for his planned marriage to a Turkish woman. CIA analysts now believe the Crown Prince has a firm grip on power and is not in danger of losing his status as heir to the throne despite the Khashoggi murder. The prosecutor announced charges against 11 accused persons and said he would seek the death penalty against 5 of them. Khashoggi is believed to have died in the office of the Saudi Consul General. His killing provoked global outrage, but little concrete action by world powers against Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter and a supporter of Washington's plans to contain Iranian influence across the Middle East. Trump has sought closer ties with Saudi Arabia, citing Riyadh's role in countering Iranian influence in the region and billions of dollars in potential arms deals. The CIA still does not know the location of Khashoggi's remains, according to the people familiar with the agency's assessment.
Well, that brings the show Press Pass tonight to an end. I can see Clay Muganda and Dikembe poking fun at me for saying a female congresswoman. What should I have said? Thank you very much to our panelists. Let's continue the conversation online. I thoroughly enjoyed your company.